welcome back. After a whole month without an episode of Justinian Talks, we're back with another one. This time, we have a reoccurring guest on our show, our very good friend Phil Pingeton, who joined us for the very first episode of Justinian Talks. Now he's joining me, my friend Dimitar and Katerina in this episode. Hey Phil, how's it going?
I'm doing great. I'm glad that it's Friday and I just ate a full pizza, so I'm feeling pretty sleepy, but I feel good.
Hey, that's more than I've eaten today, so I'm kind of like it's not a good start for me right away because now I'm thinking about pizza instead of what we should talk about. But
pizza intersects a lot of things. You know?
That is true.
Politics.
That is true. So I think we recorded about like 2 or 3 months ago. Tell us what's new with your life. I think you moved, so tell us a little bit about that before we dive into politics and what we have to talk about today.
Well, I've been living as a teacher in Thailand for almost 2.5, 3 years now. And so I just moved cities. At the time of our first talk, I was living in a small place in the south called Surat Thani, and I moved to a city that's like 3 or 4 times the size called Chiang Mai. It's like much more famous. It's a big tourist place, and just got a better job up there. And I just finished week 2 of school. I teach 3rd grade, and so I'm a little wiped from 2 weeks of 8-year-olds, but it's good. I got a new house. I just bought a new motorcycle. So I'm doing okay. It's the rest of the world that, we should talk about.
Yeah, like opening up schools is like a really big topic right now in Macedonia. And I mean, you said you've been teaching for the past 2 weeks. So how is that going? What's the protocol? Are you doing it in person or is it online? Tell us a little bit more about that.
All schools in Thailand opened after July 1st. They haven't had any local transmission of COVID, and I think like almost 90 days. It's approaching 90 days. At least that's what's been reported. There was a scare actually just yesterday about a lady who came back from Malaysia, and she apparently tested negative and then tested positive or something. But it's been a long time since COVID has spread within Thailand. So they've opened up the schools. There's some pretty strict measures. You have to check in and check out, temperature checks. Kids and teachers have to wear masks, which is really hard when you're trying to teach elementary school. Especially like with phonics, like getting ESL kids, like English as a second language, kids to actually like pronounce the words right. That's challenging. What else? My school has a pool. You can't swim in the pool. Lunch, you can only sit 2 kids at a table. So there's some pretty strict measures, but I mean, it's still functioning in person. It's been going okay so far. And honestly, like the kids are so happy to be back in school with their friends more than anything else, I think. And the parents are happy about that too. Yeah.
So we can now go for talk about a little about American U.S. politics. So we know there are a lot of things going on this couple of weeks. So the most prominent one is probably Biden picking his vice presidential pick. He picked Senator from California, Kamala Harris. So I wanted to know your thoughts about that. What do you think about that VP pick and the process that went on with it?
What do I think about the process, or what do I think about her nomination?
About the nomination and how they interacted, how they presented it, and all your thoughts about all of that.
Well, I think I think Kamala Harris is she's a politically in line person with someone like Biden. She has a long history of a pretty, what you would call like a moderate Democrat. I would just call like liberal, like politics. You know, she's very much in favor of law enforcement. She was, you know, she even called herself like the top cop of California. Locked kids' parents up in jail for them not going to school. Kind of mocked people for wanting to not abolish the police, just allocate some money away from police and prison systems to education, so we don't have to put people in prison under this paradigm. And she kind of mocked people about that. So in my opinion, she's not like a super crazy pick. I was not surprised at all that Biden picked her. The other side of it is the moderate Democrats, the liberals, trying to appeal to working class Black people and people of color. They put a woman of color on the ticket, and they're like, "Look, we're not racist. We don't support racist things," you know. And okay, I mean, like that's a it's a check of the box, if you will. But beyond that, it's not really anything too surprising in my view.
One thing I did see about this, like one of the reasoning they give why they put Kamala Harris on the ticket is, yeah, what you said about identity politics, to make them not racist and make them more willing to put a person of color in that kind of position. But look at the candidate. They're putting a woman of color, which imprisoned a lot of people in color while she was Attorney General.
Yeah.
And she's a woman, right? And she did make fun of single mothers who will not send their children in school. She threatened them that she will put them in jail. So it's not just the outside look, like she's a woman of color and so on. It's really important what she actually did. So I don't think they're looking at that at all.
I mean, I would agree with that, but I would also say like that's you're 100% right about that. But like that's not how the media, and that's not how a lot of people that are voting are going to perceive that.
Exactly.
They're going to perceive that very differently. They're going to say, well, she might not be perfect. She might have, you know, made some errors of judgment. That's a very light thing to say when you put someone in prison. But, you know, she's more progressive now. And anything to get Donald Trump out of office, even if it means that we have for all intents and purposes, a placeholder. You know, and if you want my opinion about it, like that's just not it's not an acceptable alternative to Donald Trump, in my opinion.
I would like to ask you maybe on your take, maybe this is a bit radical of me, but on your take on her feminism, so to say it, because I wouldn't call it so. I would like to perhaps hear your perspective on it. Like, how do you think that she actually does have some policy in mind that is actually feminist?
Insofar that her feminism, you know, benefits profitable, I'm going to sound like a super Marxist here, and I am a Marxist, but like, you know, like bourgeois people, right?
Yeah.
Perfect example of this isn't really quite in line with feminism, but it is in line with more of the racial dimension, which seems to be more of a component here in this election because of George Floyd protests and all of that. And that is, she, a long time ago when she was running for president, she said that she supported student loan forgiveness for people that started up a business in low income neighborhoods. So she's basically like paying people to gentrify neighborhoods in inner cities. You know, who's that going to hurt? You know, back to your question about feminism, I mean, just because a woman is in the second highest office in the United States and the world does not mean that working women and 99% of women are much better off. You know, so I don't think it makes somebody a good feminist to simply say like, well, there's a woman in power. I'm not saying it's bad, but what I am saying is like it's what are the material outcomes of this woman being in power?
I completely agree with you, and I think that this is counterproductive to feminism, honestly, because just putting a woman for the populism of it, for the marketing of it, is what makes the working woman what puts the working woman in such a bad position. Because this woman will be a white supremacist feminist, like only for the rich white lady. And it's basically the most bad thing that can happen to feminism in the 21st century.
Well, I really think it's not just about feminism. I also think it's a bigger picture. It's about how capitalism builds in anti-capitalist rhetoric into its way of looking at the world, right? Remember in 2016 when Hillary was running, like one of the things that she was saying was like, we need more women CEOs. Like nothing could be more like capitalist and out of touch than we need more women CEOs. Like, no, we need equality for women. Like we don't need more CEOs, men, women, transgender, whatever. Like the gender of the CEO doesn't matter. The CEO is the problem.
Exactly. And these same like politicians, especially women that entertain the subject of women CEOs, women in power, and so on, almost never have quality policies on education of women, education of underprivileged girls, help for single mothers, or so on. They never focus on the tires of society that should be focused on.
Yeah, because like when something goes wrong, it's like, oh, you should have learned to code. You should have learned to innovate. Yeah. You know, that's, yeah, I have no other comment about it. Other than like, I think it's just a facade.
Yeah, and like
exactly,
going along with that, I don't think it's only counterproductive to the feminist movement. I think it's counterproductive to everything a leftist should stand for. And like just that image of, you said it, like she prided herself in being top cop in California. So you have her, and then you have the person who wrote the crime bill in the 90s running for president, vice president, in a time of so much civil unrest, in a time of protests against police brutality and racial injustice. And I mean, I just don't understand how the Democrats would put up, like if someone wanted to put up more Republican or more like establishment duo, I don't think they could have done a better job at that. But how does that help people? How does that help African American minorities in the U.S.? Just like it looks like the Democrats actually want to lose the election again to Trump and blame it on those that are not going to go to vote for them because of these decisions. So it's kind of like interesting. But then again, on the other side, they actually, like the comments that I've been reading and just the analysis from those that are not really with similar beliefs as us four are, is that they actually like that image of the top cop being on the ticket. And that's interesting thinking, because you mentioned briefly, like that will calm down some of the people who's like, oh, they're not going to defund the police. They're not going to disband the police. You have Kamala Harris. Joe Biden is there too. Nothing's going to happen to the police.
But that's a failed strategy by the Democrats, though. It's a failed strategy. They tried that in 2016. They tried that moderate appeal to shake the moderate Republicans away from Trump. And did it work? you're never going to shake those people out of the Republican Party. Never. Those people, like, they vote Republican largely. I mean, I come from I come from one of the like wealthiest parts of America, like Northern Virginia, and there's like a lot of conservative people out there, and a lot of those people are Republican not because they care about the social issues. They're not even like racist, like overtly, like a lot of liberals say they are. They don't want to pay taxes, right? Oh, or they don't want their company to be regulated so that it affects their profit, right? You're like, those are your moderate Republicans, and they're never going to vote for the Democratic Party because the Democratic Party to them is the one that's going to regulate their industry. So
it looks
yeah,
like
that's a failed strategy.
no, but it's funny thing that they don't learn, and like they're doubling down on it. Like I don't know how much you had the chance to cover, like to just see what's happening and who are the speaker on the Democratic National Convention, but he had more Republicans or more righties than you had. Like you literally had AOC being there only for 90 seconds, and she was only being there because someone needed to introduce Bernie Sanders because he won enough delegates to be in the convention. So like you had Colin Powell, who I mean he is a war criminal. It's like
Yeah.
And you had John Kasich, who was terrible on abortion and all of the issues that progressives should be on the other
Michael
side of
Bloomberg
them.
was there too, right? Like,
Yeah.
or even like Bill Clinton, who like, yes, he's a Democrat, so you know, on the surface, it makes sense, but like, it's like also I would argue a war criminal. Also with his proximity with the Epstein case, like you really want that guy to be on the national like political stage right now? Like, come on, that to me, Gjorgi, is I think that is a combination of like bad political strategy, and it's also kind of it's a way of manufacturing consent, as Chomsky would say. It's like you have no choice. You have to vote for these people, right? And so we're going to cobble together a group of people that some names that and we'll humor like the progressives with giving AOC a minute and Bernie Sanders like 8 minutes or something like that. But we'll give more time to a literal war criminal, like architect of the Iraq War, a guy that like is vehemently opposed to like any sort of abortion rights and has done a lot to strip the state of Ohio, like any women in the state of Ohio that need reproductive care, thanks to John Kasich, a lot harder. Michael Bloomberg, who was only recently a Democrat, and that's not saying a whole lot about his integrity. Like it's trying to say like this is, you have to vote for these people so that we can get the Cheeto out of the office. Right? And it's not, I'm not saying that it's 100% like gonna fail. I think there's a lot of people that are saying, oh, Trump's gonna win, let's just pack it in. Like I don't think so, because if it wasn't for COVID and the economic like catastrophe that's happened as a result of it, I would definitely say, oh, Biden's the nominee, Harris is his VP, we're gonna have 4 more years of Trump. But I think the Democrats might be like onto something here. It's ultimately not going to work in the long run, but they might eke out a victory, or they might eat shit. I forgot. Am I allowed to curse on this show?
You're good. You're good.
Okay. Yeah. Well, they might eat shit. Right?
No, and like I was reading some Twitter comments, like as the DNC was going along, and someone was, I think they were joking, but there be truth to it. I mean, if they could have got Bush, they would have gotten him, and like they would have welcomed George Bush to the stage. So that was one of the things. But yeah, it's just so crazy how all of this is going, and like of course right now I think Biden, like we were talking about this in our recent pods, the ones that we do in Macedonia, and it's like the only thing DNC right now needs to do is lock Biden in his house, in his basement in Delaware, put Harris to talk, or not even like, just don't do anything for the next 2 months, or like however many days there are to the election, and just leave it to Trump to lose it. But they're finding new ways to sabotage themselves. But no, it's crazy. You mentioned Chomsky, so man, like a good continuation of this is, because I don't want to spend too much time on the Democrats and just how terrible they are. Like he's like, what should leftists do? Like there is some like different camps. Is like someone like, I don't know, Kyle Kulinski's and people that think like him are like, there's no way I'm going to vote for Biden. Then you have Chomsky, who's like, you should go vote for Biden if you're in the swing state. You don't have to vote for Biden if you're in a safe state. And then you have someone, I don't know, people that are lefties, and they're like, yes, you should go vote for Biden. So what is your thought on that?
Personally, I mean, like, all right, I'm not going to tell you how to vote for a couple of reasons. It's largely a symbolic act in the U.S. anyway. But I don't think that a vote for Biden is any better or any worse. And you have to kind of backtrack it a little bit, I think, to make this argument. Like, some socialists, and some socialists who I respect a lot, say like a vote for Biden is the better choice, even if you have to hold your nose, because even though he has a terrible record, he's a placeholder for the left to organize, right? Like, and some people even go so far as to say like, okay, like, well, now we can push him more towards the left. This I don't agree with, because you're basically giving these people power and then asking them to do what you want them to do. Like, it doesn't make a lot of sense to me, that logic. The former, though, like this idea that like Biden will be a placeholder for a more progressive and leftist candidate in 2024 is a pretty big gamble for a number of reasons. One, I mean, like, Biden's already pretty like open about. Sorry, it's just a really loud motorcycle going by. He's pretty open about like wanting more police on the streets to stop the uprisings, right, and to stop anarchists. He even used that language. He's doubled down on not wanting to support something like even like Medicare for all, which is immensely popular. So I don't know where this idea that we can push him to the left comes from. This idea of like, well, it creates a space for leftists to organize where it would be much easier to do so than under a Trump administration. Also, like Biden was never the linchpin here to the revolution. You know, he was never, you know, like, he's not like the most crucial ingredient here, nor was any neoliberal. And some people might say, like, even though it would be horrible that Trump is the president, I feel like it would gather more people to a leftist agenda when they see something like more authoritarianism, like staring them down the face, you know, staring at them in the face, excuse me. So what are my thoughts on it? That was a really long circle. Sorry if it was a little rambly. Like, if you vote for Biden, okay, like I'm not going to say that you're making a mistake, but like, you know, don't shame people who don't support him, I guess, you know, because we have a lot of good reasons to. And I mean, if Trump becomes the president, that's horrific. If Biden becomes the president, materially speaking, I guess it would not be so bad. Maybe it'd be kind of hard to say. And where was I going with that? But what it will do is, I guarantee you, if Biden becomes the president, the next reactionary Republican is probably going to be a lot more competent and a lot more like insidious than Trump. And that's
Yeah,
a big thing to take.
that's the thing that scares me the most, honestly, because if you have a continuation of Obama policies that didn't really work, or at least like nothing really changed for the like a regular average American, you have a continuation of it in the next 4 years. The next guy who the Republicans or Trump Republicans, which is the Republican Party these days,
Yeah.
they're going to nominate someone who is competent. Like if Tom Cotton is the next nominee of the Republican Party,
Yeah.
the entire world is going to go crazy. And it's like it's not overreacting. It's just like Trump, as much as we hate him, we are lucky that he's not as competent as he could have been. But like the next guy, it's gonna be tough.
Trump is also competent in ways that you shouldn't discount him. You know, he's extremely good at seeding misinformation, which confuses people. And, you know, so incompetent is, for me, if I had to choose that word again, it would be like more convincing, not really competent. Because one of the things that a lot of people, especially these like, however many never Trumpers are still actually actively protesting. So there's like, I can think of 3 off the top of my head, like Colin Powell, Kasich, and like Mitt Romney. Oh, George Bush, you know, whatever. Like the rest of them fall in line because I think I said this on the last podcast. Like they don't like the way he says stuff, but they like the content and the implications of what he says, because that's essentially what they are calling for. They just smooth it over with more political rhetoric. Trump is not very polished, and that's part of what makes him attractive. And there's going to be somebody, if Biden becomes the president, there's a good chance that there's going to be somebody who is much more smooth talking, you know, much more politically savvy than Trump.
Yeah, and can we? I mean, it's hard to really find a reason to be excited about Biden and Harris, but can you think of anything apart from the debate against Pence that Harris is going to have that you would be excited for this election cycle?
Well, you already took it. Like, I can't wait to watch the debate. I'm probably just going to get a bunch of beer and watch it with some people. That sounds like fun. Let me think. Nope. Like, I mean, I'm not even trying to be funny. Like, I can't get excited. Like, other than the gaffes, but like those gaffes get kind of old because I feel like at this point it's kind of you know, it's like ableism, like making fun of Biden's clear cognitive decline. I feel bad poking fun at him when he like veers off into some weird tangent about record players in Venezuela or something like that.
Yeah, before we move in, like I want to especially dedicate the last part of the podcast on just the down ballot races and the progressives that are winning in some of the primaries over the entire United States. But before we go there, what's your comment on, like, we were talking about this before with Dimitar and some other people here, but like it looks like apart from Corona and the economic crisis, one thing that Trump doesn't have this year, or like compared to 2016, is the ability to hit Biden where he needs to hit him. It's like with Hillary, Trump's messaging was corruption, corruption, and more corruption. And with Biden, it looks like it's, oh, he's socialist, he's controlled by the Marxists, he's controlled by, I don't know. That's his, like, I mean, we laughed at this the other day on our Macedonian podcast, which was like, Donald Trump really said that Joe Biden is further to the left than Bernie Sanders ever dreamed of going. So it's like, do you think like the strategy of Trump this year is totally off, or is he waiting for those corruption attacks in Ukraine and all of that would, I mean, you would think that there would have been like day one, as soon as Democrats are announced or as soon as Bernie Sanders drops out, Trump must have had people to tell him, like, you gotta attack Biden on corruption, not on how left he is not.
That's a good point, but I also think like it kind of goes back to creating creating an audience, right? And kind of creating this idea of choice. Like, yeah, I mean, like all four of us are very well informed on Biden's legacy and what he stands for, but most people are voting based on what they see on CNN or on Fox News, right? And Trump is using this, context of uprising, this context of economic uncertainty, as a way to tell his supporters, like, your other choice is somebody who is in cahoots with radicals that smash the CVS windows or something like that. He's creating a reality that's not, truly representative. So in some ways, that is exactly what you would expect Trump to do. Yeah, and there are plenty of like moderate Republicans and people that are kind of on the fence, either not voting or I actually know a few people that have voted for Trump, not because they're hardcore conservative and because they're racist, or it's because they're like, I don't like Democrats, like they're too far left, and I know that's a mind fuck, but like that's what they're fed, And so when they're fed that, Trump is like speaking to that audience and kind of priming that pump. So I don't think it's a totally off strategy. The New York Times will tell you that the man's losing his mind, and I can't speak for that. I'm not in the White House. If I was, I would be all over the news leaking things. But I think it's pretty calculated.
Yeah, it is calculated, but what do you think? Does that argument will touch a lot of people who can change the election? Or there are just a couple of moderate Republicans that will listen to that idea?
Well, there's a lot of people that don't like the uprising. There's a lot of people in the suburbs of America, mostly white people, that they're not racist, but they don't like the idea of seeing police cars burned. They don't like the idea of seeing looting or garbage, and they also see a lot of decontextualized videos and images of like, this is what the protesters in Portland left, after they, scuffle with the police, and they care about the environment. That does matter to people because that's what they're seeing. And so I think it could be more effective than you might think. Like take for example, like people that live in my parents' neighborhood. They're like middle to upper middle class white people that are in their 60s. Do you think they relate to like Black Lives Matter protesters? Not really, right? And that's not going to say that they're all going to vote for Trump. A lot of them will probably vote for Biden, but it will start that conversation going. And I don't know, it's hard to say. I think predicting the election is an impossible task, and it's a mistake that people have made. But like I said before, I don't think it's a random political strategy.
I think it's basically a strategy that goes through almost every society of the 21st century, where we have like the class that should be historically leftist, or by definition leftist, like the working class. In America as well, I think this is a problem because maybe not with racial minorities, but definitely with white lower class, where Trump serves what they want to hear.
Yeah.
He serves nationalism. He serves this identity propaganda and so on. So it's basically what they want to hear, no matter what their circumstances are. They don't really give a flying fuck about whether they will get richer right now. It's like, basically, I want to live in a strong country because, again, we come to the moment of education and how it's all connected down to that.
Yeah, I agree. And if you talk to a lot of people that were supportive of Trump in 2016, a lot of those folks were also Bernie supporters. And the main reason why is not because of the social issues, was because like both Bernie and Trump were opposed to NAFTA and the TPP. And, you know, that's an interesting kind of Venn diagram that I think people, that liberals intentionally misread, but leftists kind of see through that, and they see how Trump and this sort of populist Republican narrative that's taken over the party, you know, really kind of co-ops like working class people in all the wrong ways, but they do it.
Yeah, and it's funny how now Trump is like, I mean, you could argue what you said to be true in 2016 and even before that, maybe like the first 2 years of Trump's presidency, but like Trump can't attack Joe Biden on NAFTA anymore. He did the same exact thing, except he called it differently. So it's like those little things that I think that we're winning over some voters, apart from just saying what they want to hear. But like the tax cut is so unpopular in like between these people that it's not going to help him this time when Trump says, "Oh, I'm going to help you. I'm going to do this or that for you." It's like I think they could see through it, but also I don't think they would decide to go for Biden. And like it's going to be interesting to see, would they, I mean, go again for Trump, or would they sit out? Which I think that was one of the things that why I was mad that Harris was picked. Even though I understand why she was picked, I understand it's like the best political move for Biden and for the Democratic Party, because it's well-known person. It's someone that checks all the boxes, big donors, big Bing's lover, and I mean, everyone made sure to tell that, whether that was from Wall Street or somewhere else, they made sure to say that they love the pick of Kamala Harris. But like,
I sure did.
You could have just put someone that would at least try to attract those Trump Sanders voters. And I'm not sure how that's gonna work.
It's because like the middle part of the Democratic Party still has this strategy of like, we're going to shame you into voting for us. We're going to pressure you into voting for us without actually even promising to deliver on any progressive issues. And I think it's compounded by the fact that you see like a lot of progressive people jumping on board with that, because they're still just like, they're so shocked by Trump. And don't get me wrong, Trump is a terrible president and a terrible person, but he's kind of more of a symptom of a greater problem, right? And by constantly being shocked by this and being like, we just need to get him out and then we'll fix it, really doesn't, like, it really betrays how like politically traumatized you are by a Trump presidency, like how like your idea of America has been shattered, as you know. And it's no accident that these people usually come from a certain socioeconomic status. You don't really see a lot of poor people saying that. You see a lot of like middle class educated people saying. So yeah, like that's their strategy because that's the constituency of the Democratic Party. They say they're for the working class, but they're really for like coastal elites. They're for like if I was like living in DC or in California or something, and I was working for the government, they would be like that's like I'm their constituency, right? But what about everyone else? It's a very small portion.
Yeah, and like I don't know. I know it's only on Twitter mostly, but like like Bernie Sanders was ridiculed and was attacked, and he had to answer questions about his Bernie Bro army that was, I don't know, putting snake emojis to Elizabeth Warren, or, you know, there's crazy stuff that the media picked up on it. Or, like, I mean, the craziest story was that Joe Rogan endorsed Bernie Sanders. And, like, everyone freaked out about it. Everyone put clips of Rogan saying crazy stuff, which, I mean, not biggest fan of Joe Rogan, but Joe Rogan could help the Democratic Party a lot because his listener, like his audience, are those that are never going to vote for Biden and Harris. Like, there's no way it's going to happen.
That is true.
But they could
when you have
vote for Sanders, and it's like, but the point I'm trying to make is that like they freaked out over these small things, but when you have Kamala Harris's K-Hive army or whatever that is that are attacking everyone that says that Kamala Harris is not a good pick, or in using these identity politics issues, it's like, or when, I mean, we talked about it, or when you have an endorsement from a war criminal, they embrace it, which is the craziest stuff that I think that if we continue to talk about it, I'll convince myself that voting for Trump is the best option.
Yeah, and that's this like weird little like cycle that you make, right? Like, and I mean, like, I'll be voting, assuming my ballot makes it to the United States in time, and I will not be voting for Biden. I'm just gonna say that. I don't know what I'll do, but it's not gonna be Trump, and it's not gonna be Biden.
Yeah, it's hard. Like, I'm glad I'm not American, so I don't have to make that decision. But definitely, it's sometimes really hard to kind of like distinguish all of that. And I mean, moving on into our last part of the podcast, because we don't want to make it this too long, because we want people to listen to it. But definitely, I want to talk about the down ballot races. And one thing that really got me frustrated and got me yesterday was Nancy Pelosi endorsing Joe Kennedy against Ed Markey. For those that don't know, Nancy Pelosi is a big supporter of not challenging incumbents in Congress, or I guess that only means the incumbents that she likes. But like, how can progressive, like, what are your thoughts first on these down ballot races, whether that's Ed Markey's Senate race or the previous ones when, Ilhan Omar's challenger had more than like $3 million in the bank, like from all these different sources, challenging one of the most progressive congresswomen in U.S. Or when you had, we'll talk about it, but like when you had everyone trying to help, what was his name? Clay from Missouri, the one that lost from Cory Bush.
Yeah, and I didn't follow that race too much. But I will say about Omar, like, I do believe her opponent raised a significantly larger amount of money, and she still won. So that should tell us something. It should tell us that like electoral politics is important, and it's an important component to social change, but it's not the only component. I think if you just rely on electoral politics like the squad and Bernie and kind of this like within party reform, it's an incomplete measure that's not going to work. I think it needs to be coupled with like labor organizing, like real community action, kind of like, you know, the embryo of which you see with like something like the Capitol Hill Autonomous Zone. Like, I think that coupled with electoral politics will go a long way, right? It didn't matter how much money this guy raised. Like, Ilhan Omar is really popular in her district, despite being controversial and, you know, just subject to so many like brutal, you know, threats and comments and stuff like that against her. Like, she's still really popular. Um, and that says that electoral politics is not the only solution to this. You know, regarding Pelosi, I mean, like, I can't say I'm surprised that she's supporting Kennedy. I think it's you know, I haven't followed that race too much either, to be honest with you, because I don't always like the sound of Massachusetts accents. Like, I know that's bad, but my dad is also from Massachusetts, but like sometimes I just like, no, I'll just read about it. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I tend to follow it more because I'm a Red Sox fan, and I mean, my background says it all, Fenway Park, and all. But I think it's interesting how young people are most excited about Bernie Sanders and Ed Markey right now. It's like old white guys that are actually, you know, the good ones, and they're really excited about them. But yeah, when you talked about electoral, just changing everything through the electoral process. I mean, Cory Bush's election kind of shows you that that's not, you know, that's not the only requirement to change things. And for those that don't really follow that race, 2 years ago, Cory Bush lost by more than 20% from Lacey Clay, who, by the way, has been in Congress for about 20 years, and his dad was in Congress before that, holding the same seat for about 30. So she lost by 20% like 2 years ago, and this year she won.
Yeah.
She is the first one who was endorsed by Justice Democrats. She has been an activist with the Black Lives Matter movement. You know, she's been out there. She's been on the streets with the people, and you know, she lost the first time. She came back. I think that's important to put it out there, because like a lot of progressives lose. Like, yeah, we know about the squad, we know about, you know, we know about Bernie, we know about that movement, but there's a lot more progressives in a lot of primary races that will lose, and we need them to keep on going, and we need even more people to show up and go and run for office. I think that's also something that really matters, not giving up when you're down.
There's also a lot of progressives and even leftists that are winning at the state election level, which gets almost no coverage. That being said, all of these figures pulled together are such a small drop in the bucket of conservatives and neoliberals. So again, like this electoral politics combined with labor politics, you know, taking over your workplace, unionizing, creating autonomous zones, you know, that to me is something that will get some, like, that's direct action that like will immediately impact the lives of working people. Is it going to be pretty? No. Is it going to have a lot of reaction, like, oh, they're destroying property and stuff? Yeah, like that's part of the, like, that's part of the soup you get into when you deal with that. Like, a paraphrase Marx, like, I don't talk too much like a man from the 1800s, but like he said something like, people gasp and clutch at the sight of the destruction of property, but they, you know, turn a blind eye to the everyday horrors of capitalism, you know. So, I mean, I guess like labor organizing is never really a peaceful process. And this is not like an endorsement of violence. It's just a statement of fact that when people organize against capitalists, they fight back with violence. And that's what you're seeing. That's a lot of what you're seeing right now. and what is likely to happen if anything is to change.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And I think like we could have seen, like, I mean, we saw with the first week or so from like the protests that were right after the murder of George Floyd, things got done. Like some things got done. People were put in jail. But then again, I mean, the cops that killed Breonna Taylor, they're still out there. Like no one's really talking about it except for, I mean, honestly, the only people that really talk about and are put in the media, and it's sad, but it's sports media. It's like LeBron James putting out there about it, and somehow it's just becoming like a memeable thing. Is like arrest the cops who killed Breonna Taylor, and then that's
like, oh, I'm having a good day, having a beer on the beach. Also, Breonna Taylor's killers haven't been indicted yet. Like, I think that is what I'm talking about. How like the like capitalist sphere through social media and through sports. I mean, I know you're a big sports fan, but like, you know, it builds into it anti-capitalism. Why does it do that? Like, to kind of give you this like illusion of choice while also showing you that like, or trying to communicate to you that there's no alternative. You should really read a book by a guy named Mark Fisher, who talks about that. Don't read it if you're looking for a pick-me-up, though. Might.
Yeah, and this could go along with that notion of, oh, you just keep quiet and go vote, which a lot of neoliberals led by, I mean, I would say it. I mean, Barack Obama, it was like, just go vote, don't boo, vote. Well, it like what that shows to me is that they don't want your vote they don't want your vote as your voice. They want for you to acknowledge that you're ruled. Your vote is a submission, and there's a reason they demand yours, and you know, ask for you and your parents and your friends to go and vote, but not really. They don't want to hear your thoughts. They don't hear your voice. They just need your vote to beat out Trump, who, I mean, yeah, it's terrible. It's probably the worst president there could be at this moment of time, but doesn't really help much if you can't really speak out what are your problems. And I think it again, back to that point of counterproductivity that we talked in the beginning. It's like, this might be a good solution in the short run, but in the long run, again, who knows what the Republicans will come up in, I don't know, in 4 years. And
yeah,
no, go ahead.
it's also just like, it's still acknowledging that like liberalism is a linchpin to getting what you want, and it has worked under certain conditions in the past. For example, like, you know, New Deal politics, Civil Rights Act, things like that. But the political paradigm has shifted so far to the right that to you know, have any ideas that the liberals of today are going to actively push for anything that's progressive, I think is so. I just think, like, you know, it's just brought on by this, like, by this, again, this just like hysteria against Trump. And it's not to say that Trump's, you know, somehow not bad. It's just like, but it's true. There is a hysteria about it, you know, and one that hasn't really been effectively answered to. The only thing is you have to vote for the Democrats, and if you don't, you're a bad person. Like, that's essentially what it comes down to. That's what I see a lot on social media. I've gotten into arguments with people, and that's why it's one reason why I stopped, because it's like, they're like, you're a monster if you don't vote for, you know, Joe Biden. Excuse me, what? Like, it just did not make a whole lot of sense to me.
Yeah, I agree there. And I mean, my social media, when it comes to like American friends, because I did spend a year in Texas, so I do have a lot of friends that support Trump. I do have friends that are probably going to go for Biden, and then I have you guys pretty much, like leftist friends. It's like every time I decide to post something, it's like, okay, be ready for all three sides to either text you in a message, like message you or comment on it or, tweet or post something about it. But no, yeah, social media is terrible these days, and it's only going to get worse leading up to the election. And I mean, we've been talking about an hour. I wanted to talk a little bit about the Lincoln Project, but I think we covered a lot of it. So there's no point talking about moderate Republicans anymore. I mean, I don't think
Covered those bases.
yeah, I don't think they're gonna do much, honestly, except for making Trump mad and tweeting about them. Which, by the way, it's a funny thing to see. Like their ads are I think they're only targeted to Trump and to make him mad and tweet at them and make money out of it, fundraise for it. So yeah, thank you a lot for coming on the show again. We're thinking about maybe doing a live stream for the election night, so we might hit you up on that and ask you to
That
join.
sounds awesome. I would love to be there.
So yeah, when we figure out what time of the day we'll do it and how all that's going to work out, we'll let you know. And we hope that your school year goes well. And for those that are listening, we're coming back with episode every other Sunday. Yep, every other Sunday. And we're most likely going to be talking politics at least until November 3rd. After that, we might switch a little bit, but we're kind of gonna focus on more on the election just because it's fun. And I mean, it's sad what's happening. We're gonna be frustrated most of the time because of the candidates and stuff. But it's good to talk about it. It's good to. I mean, I found this conversation really helpful and just interesting to hear all of our opinion on this matter. Since I mean, yeah, we do agree about certain stuff, but we might disagree about some as well, and just see where the leftist movement is in the U.S., in Macedonia, in the world. And yeah, I'm gonna end it here, and we hope to see you in 2 weeks.
Thank you so much for having me, guys.